So, welcome, Jakob, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Mercenary, this last album soundtrack for the end of times, and more things related to the metal world. So, we are starting, I think, with a common question in all interviews. So, why the band The Land delayed 10 years to release a new album? Because Throughout the Darkness Days was released 2013. Now, 10 years later, we have this new album. So, what is the reasons?
Well, many reasons. Basically, just life. I've had two kids since then. Martin had one kid. Renee had a kid, and we did a lot of stuff. And we didn't really go on a break. We did a bit of a break in 2014. And then in 2015, we did some live shows. We went to Japan, and it wasn't like we said, let's go for a 5-year break. It was just that when you have small kids, it's not the same. When you start a family, it's not the same. And so we had a lot of adult responsibilities all of a sudden. And it wasn't like we said, hey, let's wait with the band for a while. We just felt that if we had to continue as a band, the music had to be at least as good as before. So we wanted to raise the bar quite a lot in terms of songwriting, but at the same time, we didn't have a lot of time or energy. So it took a lot of time writing the new material. Also, since 2009, we didn't have a local drummer. We only had a drummer who lived, or we had 3 different drummers in the 10 years from 2009 to 2019, and they all lived far away. So it was very hard to get the band together and get that band chemistry going. It was all, recording in front of a computer and so on. So we wanted to, we did several things that delayed the album. That was the whole family setup, but then we also wanted to raise the bar in terms of quality. Then Martin wanted to produce the album himself and build a new studio, and on top we wanted to do the keyboards ourselves. So we put a lot of obstacles in front of us, and it took a lot of time. And then we found a local drummer in 2019, and we were pretty much ready to, start getting going. And then, the lockdown happened. We just released a single in 2020, and we played a local hometown show, and we were super ready to finalize the demo recordings we had for the album. And then, the world got turned upside down, and, we were struggling just to have an everyday life with our families, providing for our families during lockdown. And it was very hard for us to write music in that period. So things kind of grinded to a halt back then. So yeah, and now it's 10 years later. So that's just, that's life.
Yeah, well, the time passed very fast. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, first, how many things will the fans will find in this soundtrack for the end of times compared to the previous album? 10 years is very different. A lot of things happen, as you mentioned, in families situation, the COVID, the prices rise up for the tour, etc. How for you? What is the biggest difference exists compared to the previous album?
Well, I think the last album was quite positive. It was, I wouldn't say happy, but it had a lot of positive energy. And I think that came out of the fact that we had the big lineup change in 2009 and made 2 albums, and we've proven ourselves. And I think we kind of, literally got through our darkest days and out through a bad period, and we had a more positive outlook on life with that album. But to me, that wasn't the most interesting direction musically. I kind of found that I missed some of the heaviness and the melancholy, some of the dark atmosphere from the old material, and so that's what I wanted to focus on the new album. And to make the songs a bit slower and heavier, so they would be a bit more aggressive to play live. So they're very much written in a way that will make them fun to play live. So that's some of the differences. Yeah, and I think another difference is that there's a lot more aggressive vocals on this new album compared to the last one. So I think like we kind of reinvented ourselves and went back to some of the old albums and took that sound and made it more modern. That's how I think of it.
Okay. One detail that I caught my attention is about the title of the album, this new album soundtrack for the end of times. Because as a curiosity, we are passing the pandemic 2 years and a half for many countries, and curious thing, the name fits perfectly for this aspect in our history in the humankind. So perhaps perhaps the lyrics from this new album are related with the pandemic, but with the inner struggles that we have at that time for a lot of things.
Yeah, so it definitely relates to it because it's not like the title. The meaning is not that it's the apocalypse. It's not Judgment Day. It's not the end of the world, but it's the end of times, like or the end times, actually, like the biblical concepts that these are the last times. Maybe these are the last times of certainty. It's the last time of modernity. It's the last times of civilization, because we also see a lot of populist politicians rising, and maybe people no longer feel that democracy will naturally spread across the globe. The political scene is getting more and more divided, and the conflicts are bigger. We have Corona, and we got through that, but who knows about the next pandemic? At the same time, we've got artificial intelligence or large language models. That's a bit unsettling for a lot of people. So the whole thing is much more that in times of great uncertainty, you need some kind of foothold, right? And one of the footholds you have, that's music. That's music for the soul. It helps you go on and feel like you're connected to some part of the world, right? So that's very, very much what the title is about.
Okay. Well, that's well for me. Okay, nice to know about it. So let's talk about now. Well, let's talk about now a little history of Mercenary, because as I said in the previous of this interview, I remember when I hear for the first time First Breath, a great album with melodic death metal influence from Swedish.
That's old school.
Yes, I got it. I got it on CD. Even
wow.
in Metalerum, we did an article about the albums, the death metal albums from the 90s in Denmark, and First Breath is included. So it's a great album for me. For all media. But a curious thing that I have for that time is because Mercenary create at the beginnings of 90s, in 1991. But then 7 years later, you decide to release your first album. So even obviously the Supremacy EP is in 1996. But why the band delay 7 years? Yeah. 7 years to release their first album, because it's Europe is not like Latin America. In Latin America, when you create a band in the 80s or 90s, you delay 10 years, 15 years, because the economic here, it was very difficult at that time. But in Europe, when a band created in the 91, 92, 1 year or 2 years later, they had the first album, EP, etc. So that's why I'm curious about that. So why the band delayed 7 years to release the first album?
Well, if we go back into the underground history of the band, then the funny thing is that I was a fan of the old demos that Mercenary did in 91, 92, Domicile, and those were before I joined the band. So I joined the band in 95, and the band had done a few demos. I knew them from the local scene, and then the mission back then, after we kind of found out that the chemistry was good between me and the previous members. We played some shows, and then the mission was to write the debut album, and we spent like a year writing First Breath together. And then we sort of, our producer, Jakob Hansen, it was actually his label, Serious Entertainment, who wanted to release the album. And so we recorded it and, finalized the deal with him. And then we, I think we recorded it in 97 and it came out in 98. So for me, that didn't feel like a long time. But I think in the years prior to me joining, the band were like having a lot of lineup changes and changing direction from like death metal in the style of Morgoth, like quite dark, to something more melodic, like more modern, a bit Machine Head inspired, more groovy, and a bit more melodic. And yeah, so that's where I came in, and that's how it happened. So yeah.
Well, okay. Well, you told me about the history about the last night from the 90s, and now and you are the last member for the one. I think this for the second for the second lineup from the Mercenary, because the first lineup from Mercenary is nobody is now in the band now. You are the last. You are you are the last member from the 90s in Mercenary.
From the debut,
yeah. So,
that's true.
For you, how did you see the group? So how many things changed for you since the beginning to now with the new members? Did you communicate? Did you communicate with the first members of the Mercenary?
The old members, some of them I still see sometimes. One of them was like a sound technician at a festival last year, and we said hi. That was the drummer, Rasmus. Sometimes I write with the old singer, Carl Hans Henrik Andersen, and one of the old guitarists, Nikolai, he unfortunately died. So yeah, it's I don't see the old members from the 90s that much. But most of the people are in the environment in Aalborg. So sometimes we meet, and I got we are playing some shows in Denmark these coming weeks, release shows, and like our old drummer Mike Park and our old singer Mikkel, they both wrote to me to see if they could get on the guest list because they wanted to come and check out the shows, and that's okay. So we're doing that. So we'll see them in a while. Yeah. But you asked about my feeling about the different periods as well, and to me, some people talk about like the band as if there are two periods, like the albums in the zeros, 11 Dreams, the Hours That Remain, and so versus the new lineup. But to me, there's the Kral period, the Kral era, First Breath. Then there's the Kral and Mikkel era, which is Everblack, 11 Dreams. Then there's the Mikkel Alone era, which is The Hours That Remain, and the Mikkel and Renee era, which was The Hours That Remain, the touring cycle, not the album, but the touring, and Architect of Lies. And now we have the Renee era. So that's 5 different eras of the band. And I think that's been incredibly frustrating that we had so many changes and we were unable to have a stable lineup. But and that might also have, it's difficult to grow a band when you change your lead singer 2 times, right? That's the worst thing you can do as a band. But if we hadn't done it, we would just have stopped the band because it didn't work anymore. So I think these changes is probably also what makes it interesting for me to still play in a band after, almost 30 years. Yeah.
Well, yes. Talking about this one, you told me about the eras the eras from Mercenary. And for me, I think I think I have eras, because for me the first three albums, First Breath, Ever Black, 11 Dreams, are more like melodic death metal in the old way, this kind of stuff. Since the hours that remained, the band included a lot of these kind of things, more groove, even more progressive in some ways, a more heavy metal into there. So a lot of stuff happened with that album. So for the, and one, since then you decide to grow, you decide to growing up with a lot of mixtures, a lot of things. You are more progressive metal band than usually in that you was in the 90s. So it's normal. I think it's the evolution of the band. But for you, with more than 5 records in your career, so which album for you defines complete the sound of a Mercenary for you, or perhaps which album?
Wow, that's a difficult question. I think First Breath didn't sound typical for the Danish scene, but I think it was more with Everblack that we started to do something that was very different from how everybody else sounded. And I think I wouldn't say perfected it, but took it even further on 11 Dreams. So I think 11 Dreams is probably the album that most people consider the important one, not least because we were also signed to Century Media on that album, the big European label, and that got us a lot of exposure. So a lot of people discovered us on that album. For better or worse, that's one of my favorite albums. And then I don't know, I would say the new album too, because I feel like we managed to reinvent ourselves and make ourselves relevant again. At least to me, I feel like we are doing something relevant. I love what we're doing now, and I'm incredibly proud of the effort we put into this album and the outcome. And I think we've done everything right. And now we'll just have to see, you know, how the world reacts if people can remember us even. But that's, you know, that's secondary for me. The important thing is the album and the music and the camaraderie, and then secondary what we achieved by it. You know, you can't control that. You can only hope for the best.
Okay, other aspects that are, as you can see, I think now in the Denmark scene, is now the Denmark is more stronger than ever, I think, because I remember when a lot of bands appears in the 90s, when Ill Disposed, Mercenary, Erlanding, Frozen Soul, Dominus, a lot of that metal stuff. A lot of this
you know your stuff.
I know a lot of this metal appear, but at some point that band disappears completely of the world. Just you and Ill Disposed are the bands that still on foot since the 90s to know. So for you, what are the reasons at that time that all bands disappear into the death metal scene, especially in Denmark? And well, in the last 3 years, I remember I saw that the test, the maceration, and I think another band returns from the grave.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I think one of the reasons is also the reason why some of the bands from the Zeros disappeared. Like you had Nemec and Raunchy and other bands that were quite active and made a lot of good albums back then. But I think, to me, the simple fact is that when people reach the age of 30 in Denmark, they have their education and they start settling down with a family. They get a mortgage, they have to get a real job to pay the house, and then whenever people hit that age, they start to the bands start to change members because not a lot of bands in that area, probably none, made any money from it, because none of the bands were touring very hard. So it was only those who survived were the ones who had it as, really passion project. And I think one of the reasons is also like Denmark is a very almost socialist country. We have a really good welfare, and if you can get a free college education, so that's the case for me. When in the zeros when we wrote, we did albums back to back, like 2 3 years in between, and I would be at the university, and we would, apart from getting a free education, we also get money from the state to support ourselves for 5 or 6 years while we're at the university. So for me, I would combine that with touring. So that made it very easy to tour because I could just, get back home and do my exams, or maybe, push them a bit for next year and so on. That was very easy. So I think a lot of people in Denmark are quite, it's very convenient for them. If they have an education and play music on the side, you can totally do that. And once you get out on the other end of that and you have to get a job and there's a real world, and then a lot of people stop playing music.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your opinion about now the Denmark scene? Because two units arise very fast in the last couple of years. Beast and Undergang are great bands, for mostly great bands for a lot of people. So what's your opinion about now the death metal in Denmark? It's much better than the 90s, perhaps.
I'm very impressed by the young scene right now. I can hardly keep up because there's a lot of bands, and a lot of them are touring a lot, and they're doing something very, very interesting. I think, like Cabal is touring all over the world. You have Vola that are like really blowing up, and there's just Time Child, a progressive band, has come out, and there's just so many. I can hardly name them and do them any justice. But it seemed like when again in the zeros, when we toured a lot, we were a handful of bands that did that and got international record deals. And then when we kind of scaled back a bit, it was like there was a vacuum from 2010 to 2015 or 17 where there were not really all that interesting bands. Maybe I don't know why, but then in 2015 it was like things started to pick up and you would get this incredible energy from the scene. And I don't know why, but at the same time you have this festival, Copenhagen, that started. It's been going for what is it now, 13 years or so. And it's quite big, and it's sort of perhaps legitimized metal as a mainstream genre in Denmark to some extent. And maybe it also gave young bands something to aspire to. They had to really, make an effort in order to be booked for the festival. And maybe that's something that helps explain why the scene has become very professional now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as you can see now, returning to the new album, as you can see now, the digital platforms change completely the hearing music. We're returning back on time. We're just hearing singles, but in the 40s and 50s, and now with that trend returns now. Then just singles.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about now? The people are just listening singles, and the albums doesn't have the same impact compared to since the 60s to the 90s.
Yeah, I don't really like that. I mean, it's for us, it worked out well to do some singles because we've been away for a lot of years. So, and it was it felt very good to be able to give the fan base a single in 2020 from the ashes of the fallen, because we've been away for such a long time and people didn't know if we were still active or not. So that worked out really well, and we did this crowdfunding campaign a year and a half probably, and we did our second single at the same time, and I think that helped show people the direction they were going in, and what were they supporting, and I like that. I also like the fact that you know, to some extent you can get on playlist with your singles, but as you say, it also somehow makes the experience of the album smaller, right? You already heard a few songs, and for me, I'm still an album person. I still like to go deep into albums, and yeah. But I think that's probably, people don't have the same attention span anymore, and people are trying to, really put out singles that will catch your interest. But I think that doesn't always work too well with metal, because at least for me, metal is a genre that requires that you delve into the album. So I'm old school. I'm more of an album person.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I prefer the album. Always the album's much better than just one song.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
One detail that I did not accompany in all your albums is I remember when Mikkel Sandanger sings
Yep.
in Mercenary, sings the Ever Black album, because one of the albums that I love his singing is The Hours That Remain, with a huge range of heavy metal. That's amazing. Right. And now you are singing with now as René Pedersen tries to do the same thing, a high range of singing. So even I remember when you play sometimes in small gigs with proving other vocalists for the dates, etc. And so how do you see? Well, how do you find this kind of vocalists? Because at the same time harsh, and the same time clean area in the voice, so it's very difficult. Because I spoke this year with Per Nilsson, and that's why the Christian from the first two albums is retired of the band, because in live presentations the range of the heavy metal and with the harsh art is very difficult sometimes. So how do you see this aspect live? Is very difficult now for René, or perhaps you have a support, or perhaps we'll do some backing vocals, or who knows?
Well, actually, we are incredibly fortunate to have René, because he can do it. He can just do it live. He can do both vocals, and it's not that big of a problem for him. I mean, on the album, he goes a bit to the extremes. Like, he will go really high and he'll go really deep, and sometimes we have to make a new interpretation live. So if we have do harmonics and so on, then he kind of finds the right expression. Maybe we do some dubs where there's a clean melody and there's a shouting beneath it on the album, and then live he will do a kind of melodic shouting in between. So we try to, or more or less we have to, let René reinterpret the songs for a live setting, like to just find out exactly how it is. But he's a killer vocalist. I think sometimes he doesn't really get the credit he's deserved. But I think he's just an amazing live vocalist. And he's just born into it. He's not a guy who practiced and practiced and practiced. He just does it. Yeah, there he is.
Yeah. What do you? Well, a few months ago. No, I think last year, or I think last year, perhaps this year. I remember. I don't remember well, but I remember that Jeff Scott Soto, people from Iron Maiden, and a lot of people are complaining about the backing vocals live, because a lot of artists doing this kind of aspect to get not tired live. It's normal sometimes, because they have 15, 20 dates. Each 20 dates is the voice, and the voice is the voice decrease in the perfection even in live presentation. So what is your point of view? What is the point of view now that the technology can give us that opportunity that are using backing vocals in live? Are you using perhaps perhaps when René is tired, it's normally after 5 or 6 shows tired, and perhaps they he will use backing vocals to
First, I don't really have an opinion on what the old guys do when they're doing a 2-month tour. I mean, I read about some controversy with was it Halloween, who
Yeah.
were like the management were the ones who decided by contract what would happen if the singer could or could not sing. And well, that's kind of, then it gets a bit absurd and commercial. And I really can relate to that kind of scenario because that's not where we're at. Renee, to me, when if Renee has a bad evening live, then he knows, but probably it's very rare that the audience will be able to tell. It just takes more effort for him. So we are not doing backing vocals. Like if he has a bad day, we will turn it up. But actually, on these new tour dates we're doing now, we started to introduce just a tad of backing vocals for the first time ever. And this is just to make the choruses sound a bit bigger. And basically, it's because we're I wouldn't say we're a hobby band, but we have quite big commitments with our families, with our jobs, with our life situation, and if we were to, we can't really compete with bands who does this for a living or who plays tours like 3-4 months a year, because we'll not be able to do that. So yeah, that's kind of, as in every other aspect of life, it's all about the balance. I think you can do it subtly and you can do it tastefully, or you can do it like it sounds totally mechanical and audience is not really getting a live performance. And I think the trick is in the balance. It's really about how it comes across, and is there some kind of dishonesty going on? I mean, for me personally, I think it makes no sense if you have a backing track for the main vocals. I mean, then why are you even doing it? Just cancel them. Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
we're close to this interview, Jakob, and for this aspect, what kind of plans do you have for this new soundtrack for the end of times? Perhaps you will embark. You told me you will embark on a few tours in Europe, and perhaps you will embark in few tours in Asia again, Australia or US, or perhaps your first steps here to Latin America with us. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, it's difficult. The touring situation is very difficult right now in Europe, and I think we're a bit challenged by the fact that we've been away for 10 years, and so we're only starting to get reviews right now, and we have to some extent we have to build gradually up. Because a lot of people might not know we're still active
Jakob.
or active again. So we have to take a step, and also because of our family
You are
situation,
frozen, Jakob.
being offered like a tour
Jakob, can you hear me?
lasting a month in the US next year. I don't know if we can say yes or no. We have to work to prepare.
Oh,
You're here again.
Yes, yes.
How much did you hear? Well, basically,
just the 10 first words, then
okay.
then
Okay. Yeah, so basically, we have to build it up again, and I don't know exactly what will happen. We have some plans for touring Denmark this fall, again in the spring, and again next fall. We're trying to do some European tour dates with a Danish band and a really cool Swedish band. So that could work out really well. That's for the spring. We have a loose deal with a booker from Spain about some shows, and we sort of had to make it all fit together because we're all family guys now, so the shorter answer is that we have to take it step by step and see what's possible. We don't have a big golden master plan to conquer the world,
Okay.
but we feel like we're in a good spot that the music on an album can help us.
Okay, okay. Well, now talking about all, as I said in the first question, talking about other kind of aspects, especially in the music industry, as you can see, a lot of things change because the digital platforms, the algorithm, the social media, and a lot of things more. So if we relate this aspect in social media, especially, we are in years. There are no more bands that fill stadiums, and everything is personalized by tastes and colors. And now, thanks to the TikTok trends, there are stupid things that happen in social media, and a lot of things happen more. So, where do you think are enters in this generation that already consumes little or nothing physical copy material and only takes music as accompaniment or part of their background when they wash the car, when they wash the laundry and cooking this or going to the gym? It's not more important like me because I'm put a full attention to hear the music, sit in my chair to hear music, perhaps with wine, beers, etc. But now it's very different. The people are more like background the music and not paying attention to full albums, etc.
Yeah. I think sadly you point to something very, very essential and quite disturbing about the way things are going, and I think it's very much tied up to the whole idea of convenience. I'm guilty myself. I would love to be a guy who collected vinyl, and I love the idea of vinyl, and I can't be bothered to listen to vinyl because I work. I have a work where I sit in front of a computer, so I stream albums because that suits my work life very well. When I'm done working, my kid gets home, and then they take my attention. I don't really have uh, uh, free time to listen to albums, or at least I don't have the mental energy to do that on vinyl. But I'm happy that a lot of our fans still does it, and we are shipping out a lot of vinyls these days, as we talked about before. So I'm very happy that we can make this physical connection still with our fans. And we even sold a lot of CDs, and I was like checking out the list of our pre-orders of CDs, and I'm thinking, Jesus, our fans must be really old since they are still, buying CDs. And I think you're right, and I think one of the big blessings about modern technology, that's the convenience. You can you don't have to search for new music by taking a bus for half an hour, going to the record store, asking for recommendations, asking if you can listen to this band or that band. I did that when I was a kid, and I would listen to radio shows and write down. I would tape them and I would write down the band names and go to record stores and tape straight with my friends. And it felt like being a member of a secret club or secret organization. You saw this whole underground, this whole different world, secret world that was amazing, and it felt really privileged to discover. And now everybody has everything on their smartphone,
Yeah.
and none of it has real value. So I think all convenience is, to some degree, for every convenience you get into your life, there's some part of your soul that dies. Because I mean, a lot of what gives life value is that you put effort into things. It's not what you get, but how you get there. And if you don't have to put any effort into anything, then what is it worth? Why should people pay for music if they can have an AI to generate a new album that sounds more or less like Mercenary? Why should they pay for a vinyl?
Yeah.
So I'm definitely worried about where the technology will take us. I think there's a lot of positive things to be said about a more simple life, but at the same time you can't really turn back things. So you can't turn back time. I mean, you can make, on a personal level, you can make a decision that you can support your favorite bands, you can buy their t-shirt, you can support them on Bandcamp, buy the vinyl and so on, but can you make your children do the same? Probably not. But I try to teach my children the value of music, so we play a bit of music together. That's mostly just electronic. Have some keyboard set up and a drum machine in our kitchen and some stuff. And I had brought them to Copenhagen and we saw Gojira together, and they loved the songs with the flying whales. That was very relatable for them. They're quite young still, so I mean, at this point, it's not really up to guys like you and me anymore. I think it's up to the next generation to find a way to keep music from being soulless and just losing its value. But I think all we can do is to keep on doing what we do.
Okay.
This generation. So,
yes,
but I'm not super optimistic.
Right. Well, Jacob, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoy this one like me, a terrific guy. Pleasant to meet you. Really know your rehearsal room, and you are signing CDs or for the vinyl area. So it was a really pleasure to talk with you. And perhaps we want to add something to your Latin American fans that expect someday you will do a tour here in Latin America, and Metallerium followers.
Yeah, that would be amazing. It would be a dream come true if we could visit South America at some point, definitely. And you really took me by surprise by your knowledge of the Danish metal history and First Breath. So to me, it's I always get flattered and honored when I hear that our music made it outside of Europe, especially like the old music. I haven't heard from very many people who know about First Breath outside of Europe, so that's incredible. So yeah, I hope we'll meet in person one day. That would be very cool.
I hope someday.
Yeah. Okay.